हेलो हेलो चेक 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 1 2 3 हेलो चेक ऑडियो चेक 1 2 3 हेलो हेलो चेक 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 मिल रहा है हेलो हेलो मिल रहा है ना हेलो हेलो चेक 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 ऑडियो चेक 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 ऑडियो चेक चेक 1 2 3 हेलो हेलो चेक 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 ठीक है हाँ हाँ क्या हुआ नहीं ऐसी तो नहीं चल रहा कुछ वो नॉइज़ आ रही है क्या क्या आ रहा है थोड़ा सा सरसराहट की आवाज़ आ रही है हाँ हेलो हेलो चेक 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 1 2 3 हेलो 1 2 3 4 हेलो चेक ऑडियो चेक 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 ठीक है भाई क्योंकि स्टार्ट होने वाला है ना 10 मिनट में हेलो हेलो चेक 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 ऑडियो चेक 1 2 3 हेलो चेक 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 ठीक है ओके
Good morning. Hello. Is it fine?
Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. माइक पे सर माइक पे हेलो ओके
Good morning. The Honorable Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs and Honorable Union Minister for Commerce and Industry will be here with us shortly. Good morning and a warm welcome to all of you to the release of assessment of states and union territories under the Business Reforms Action Plan 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, on this very special occasion, it is our honor and privilege to have the Honorable Union Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, who has very kindly consented to be the chief guest for today's program. It is indeed our privilege to have the Honorable Union Minister for Commerce and Industry, Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, and Textiles, Shri Piyush Goyal ji, for gracing the occasion. May I now request Shri Rajesh Gupta, Deputy Director General, DPIIT, to deliver a welcome address.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of DPIIT, I take great pleasure in extending a very warm welcome to all of you. We are privileged and honored to have with us Honorable Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, Honorable Union Minister for Commerce and Industry, Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, and Textile, Shri Piyush Goyal ji, Secretary DPIIT, Shri Anurag Jain ji, Additional Secretary DPIIT, Srimati Sumita Davra ji, Joint Secretary DPIIT, Srimati Manmeet Nanda ji. So Business Reform Action Plan, as we call it BRAP, this exercise stems from the idea of creating a robust, investor-friendly ecosystem in the country by streamlining government regulatory functions vis-a-vis business cycles to bring efficiency, increase transparency, and increase the effectiveness of the government functioning. And hence, improving ease of doing business in the country. A significant part of the clearances and approvals related to the business cycles fall under the ambit of state governments. Through BRAP exercise, the state government's competitiveness is induced in the state governments to carry out business reforms in terms of ease of doing business in the country and attract investments. So DPIIT, in association with state governments, has been releasing BRAP annually to steer business reforms in the country since 2014. The states governments have already been ranked 4 times in the past, last in 2019, in terms of the ease of doing business environment in the country. And today, for BRAP 2020, we are here to rank the states in terms of ease of doing business. There are certain unique features in BRAP 2020, just like to share with you. So there are 301 reform points in BRAP 2020. Some features have been introduced for the first time, like sectoral reforms across 9 sectors. Then there was an extensive capacity holding with the states through webinars and detailed FAQs for the best practices in the proposed reforms area. And lastly, A utility was made available in the BRAP portal itself for states to upload the user feedback regarding the reforms carried out by them. Like previous years, BRAP 2020 also proposes to assess states based upon the feedback of the users of the respective states, which they have uploaded on the website themselves. So based upon their feedback regarding improvement in the business climate in the states are being ranked. With these words, I close my welcome remarks. Thanks a lot. Please.
I would now request Srimati Manmeet Nanda, Joint Secretary DPIIT, to present the journey of Business Reforms Action Plan.
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Finance Minister, ma'am, thank you so much for gracing the occasion. Honorable CIM, sir, thank you always for leading us and encouraging us. Secretary Anurag Jain, sir, for motivating us. Madam Sumita Davra, Additional Secretary, DPIIT. Friends of the media, state government officials and colleagues from the Central Ministry, and all my colleagues from DPIIT, a very, very warm welcome once again. I will quickly take you all through the Business Reform Action Plan journey that we had started way back from 2014. It was December 2014 when the chief secretaries, there was a conference and they sat together, and because of a collective decision, it was decided to undertake the Business Reforms Action Plan to include 285 reforms since then. And since then, this journey has been based on more and more maturity and the ability and the priority of reforms that were wanted to be undertaken by both the Government of India and the state governments. Each of the reform areas and the action plan covers action plans that are given in detail, the requirements of that reform, and with specific areas and sub-areas, and with a very detailed, defined assessment methodology. And there is a booklet, which is an implementation guide that is shared with the state governments and the UT administrations, and a very defined, transparent ranking methodology. Next, please. The BRAP has certain key mandates across all the reform areas. The reform areas, like we have seen, have been increasing over the past, and it is basically for the development of an online system for government to business service deliveries. And the primarily mandate of all the reform areas is give the information in the public domain, tell the public and the business entities what are the applicable fees, licenses, NOCs, what are the procedures for application submission right up to approval, a comprehensive list of document areas. And every reform area also outlines the end-to-end online process, how to upload the documents, how is it able to track the system of application there, download the approval also, and some cases till now over the evolution, even third-party verification if it is possible on an end-to-end online process with very defined timelines, mandated through a Public Service Delivery Guarantee Act or equivalent legislation for approval of that specific application and reform area. And a very important aspect of the reform mandate system, an online dashboard system. This was brought into place basically to put out in the public domain what is the basis on which the applications are being received and processed, what is the time taken, the mean time, the medium time, everything out in the public domain, and the dashboard to be upgraded regularly. And finally, towards the 2020, we also insisted upon integrating these dashboards with the state single window system. Next, please. The BRAP evolution of reforms, like mentioned, started way back from 2014-15 with 285 reforms. And every year, there were a series of other reforms that were added. Just to mention very specific few ones, way back in 2016, the access to information and transparency enablers was added, basically to give investors comprehensive information. The online single window system with 13 services was recommended for integration from 2014-15. And as of the BRAP 2020, whose assessment we will be seeing today, 41 services were required to be integrated. The central inspection system, another very important land share reform area that was brought about by the BRAP, was the streamlining of inspections under 12 acts like labor, boiler, environmental, legal metrology, and investment enablers. Next, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The BRAP 2020, as mentioned, has total reforms of 301 from basic areas of 15, and new reforms were 118. This was the first time that there was focused reforms in these sectoral sectors, like movie shooting, telecom, tourism, fire, healthcare, among others. Next, please. These are the basic highlights that were seen in the BRAP 2020, with my colleagues in the state governments have really worked very, very hard and have got phenomenal results and reforms that have been put into place. The first one would be the one-stop solution of all business requirements, the state single window system. 30 states and UTs have fully developed this, and 6 states are on the process of development. And we have the national single window system that has been launched, and already 14 states are onboarded. And the plan for BRAP 2022 is a focus on the national single window to onboard all the states and UTs. And today we have a very detailed presentation on the same by Additional Secretary, Madam Sumita Davra, in the second session. The next was the inspection enablers, the compulsory random central inspection roadmap. Very important pain point for business entities and has been an integral part of the reform agenda. And also to ensure that in the BRAP 2020, the new parts were to ensure that not the same inspector should come and inspect the same establishment twice consecutively, improvements as we learned through the way, and that the inspection report should be uploaded within 48 hours of inspection. Great news that 20 states and UTs have fully developed and institutionalized the central inspection system. Next, please. The integrated application process for construction permit enablers has also been there, an integral part of the BRAP exercise right from the very beginning. And now an online system has been put into place, and this has been the focus so far, and we will maintain the focus again until 2022 as well. The ability of obtaining utility permits simplified. The focus on this aspect has been to ensure that there are reduced documentations required for obtaining electricity connection. Earlier, the documents were almost about 8 to 9 across different states and UTs. This has been brought down. And now, if there is no right-of-way issue involved, the idea is to give in with a defined timeline of 7 days, electricity connection. And it is very encouraging to see that more than 20 states and UTs have fully developed these online systems and enhanced their service deliveries. Next, please. The environment registration enablers has also been a very integral part of the BRAP journey, and we have now focused on increased validity period of consent to operate 5 years and above, and also the focus is on self-certification for existing business entities or a third-party certification. Again, based on our other journey of reducing compliance burdens and reducing the burdens for any kind of business entities and citizens to bring about reduced pain points for all of them. And the other important aspect of the BRAP journey was the land administration and transfer of land property, which required digitization of land records up to 20 years and a unique property ID. Next, please. The plug-and-play option for ensuring infrastructure and facilities was basically undertaken first in the BRAP 2020 with a mandate to boost manufacturing and infrastructure. And 19 states have provided this plug-and-play option for promoting sectoral investments. And the most encouraging, and I'm very happy to explain and announce that 7,496 reforms have been implemented across states and UTs as a part of the BRAP assessment, a far increase from the 4,301 reforms that we saw during the BRAP 2019. My heartiest congratulations to everybody who's in the room today, because your efforts is what that brings that number to what we see today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. I would now request Shri Anurag Jain, Secretary DPIIT, to kindly address the August gathering.
Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji, Honorable Commerce and Industries Minister Piyush Goyal ji, my colleagues Sumita Davra, Manmeet Nanda, who has so ably marshaled this whole effort, colleagues from the states, media, and all other invited guests. It is really a matter of great pleasure to be discussing the results of Business Reform Action Plan 2020. I'm reminded of 2014, when the present government came. One of the first directions received from the Prime Minister's office was minimum government, maximum governance. And there were a slew of changes which came along with it. But at the same time, we started focusing on ease of doing business, this ranking was given by World Bank. We were ranked at 142nd at that point of time. In a matter of 5 years, we rose to 63, a jump of 79. Really tremendous effort done. But that is not the story. We in DPIIT, my predecessors who did at that point of time, they realized that ease of doing business ranking is only limited to only 2 cities. So if you carry out reforms only in 2 cities, you will rise higher in the ranks. But the purpose is to ensure that the business environment improves in the whole country. So therefore, we came up with this concept of Business Reform Action Plan, which nudges, encourages all the states to improve the business environment. And as things go, as soon as a framework was created, all states started following that path, and there was a huge improvement. I recall in first business ranking, there was a tie of 5 states for the first rank. Almost every state had done 100% of the reforms which were desired in the framework. But then slowly we have also graduated. It is just not the self-reporting by the states. We have moved to feedback. Feedback is a real thing. Even if I have done a reform on paper, maybe I have created a single window, but for the person, if you apply on the single window and still you have to follow with every window holder, then single window is meaningless. So the real business environment is dependent on the feedback from the states, which we started last year with 100% weightage being given to the feedback. I'll not go number of reform areas, etc., 9 new sectoral reforms which my colleagues have already shared, but that is very important. We have been continuously improving the benchmarks. What gets achieved by every state, there's no point giving weightage once again to that. We remove that from the framework and get new things added. So it's a question, the exercise of continuous improvement which we continue to do. This year we saw another thing. So that when results get declared by Honorable Finance Minister, you'll notice that the difference between the states was so little that we felt that telling someone as first and other one as fifth, because fifth doesn't carry the same weight. When you go out, you say, I am 5th in the rank or 7th in the rank. The difference was so little that we have decided to do away with the ranks. And instead, we have started from this year in grading in proper bands. Like there's a band for top achievers, then there's a band for achievers, and that's how you'll see the results. Because the fact of life is, and we'll not be even telling the results, who is ranked number 1 or 2, because we'll just be telling the categories. The purpose is, number 1 rank and number 3 rank difference is less than 1 percentage point, which is based on feedback. So if somebody has given some minor thing, otherwise the other reforms have been done. Incidentally, even in the second category, when we talk about achievers, most of the reforms have been done. It is only a difference in the feedback which has led to a slightly lower valuation, which we also realized because this year was a corona year. Maybe the message with the people was not there that you would be asked on the feedback. So a minor difference. So to my understanding, even in the top category of top achievers and even in the category of achievers, there's hardly any difference. So which is a very good news for the country. frankly speaking, as Secretary DPIIT, what I would like, that every state is in the top achievers. Means whatever benchmark we have set up for ourselves has been achieved by every state. And that's the good news. So that is what we would be driving at. So therefore, from this year, we have changed that system. We have also institutionalized the whole calendar, which after the first session when the Honorable Finance Minister and Honorable CIM leaves, thereafter Manmeet will carry one more session with the states to explain and discuss the reform action plan for 2022. We have been engaging with you by and large. I myself chaired 2 meetings on the video conference, but still the final touch-up will be given today with Manmeet in the discussion with all the states. But what we also propose to do, the whole calendar will get institutionalized this year. So every year you will have the same dates, etc., so that states are sure what is going to happen. This year, I must thank Honorable Finance Minister. She is sitting here. She gave such a huge thrust on PM Gati Shakti in her budget. And that's a very good news for the business. Feedback from the businesses, ma'am, is that we have done a lot on ease of doing business. Of course, there are certain states which still work needs to be done. But in major states, a lot of good work has been done. Now we need to bother about the cost of doing business. And for cost of doing business, one important cost which comes into play is the logistic cost. People tell us that the logistic cost in India is 13%, 14%, and we need to do something about it. So under PM Gati Shakti program, one of the stated objectives is to reduce the cost of logistics in the country to the benchmark of about 8-9%, which is world over. Of course, we should also know that when you talk about the cost of logistics, world calculates it in terms of percentages. So cost of logistics for agriculture cannot be same for as it is for electronics. Finally, the cost is per ton per kilometer. So if in my economic mix, my contribution of agriculture is more or volume is more per unit value of the product, then the cost of logistics as a percentage tends to be higher. So we need to look holistically what we need to do, but still there are a lot of improvements possible. And under PM Gati Shakti program, it is whole of government approach which is working. Today is not the session for PM Gati Shakti, but we have also engaged with the states on PM Gati Shakti. And there was a Chief Secretaries conference recently. So now all Chief Secretaries seem very energized. All of them gave very, very positive feedback about PM Gati Shakti. The way we are working, it will improve, make the infrastructure multimodal. Transition from one particular mode to another will be seamless. We are also, as part of logistic policy, working out details that it will be possible to transport things using single document. Like today you need a separate documentation for trucks, separate documentation for rails, separate documentation for shipping. Single document, seamlessly connected, digitalized system, that is the kind of area we are driving at. Ma'am, I must also thank you for yesterday's decision that now small people don't need to. That's a very historic decision. We had been looking forward to it as a DPIIT department. We have raised with the finance department, and we are very grateful to you for having approved of that. This is a government which listens, I would say. There was a meeting, there was a report in newspapers which talked about jailed for doing business. What we did when we heard that? We made them our partners. We created a committee where they are members. The authors of the report are members on that committee. And they are working along with us. So from ease of doing business, we moved to ease of living, reduction of compliance burden. That is what we were targeting. Now, this year, apart from this, the major focus is decriminalization. The major role is of states. When we look at it, almost about 80% of the provisions, the legal provisions where a business person can be sent to jail relate to states. There are 5-6 states which the total number of provisions exceeds 1,000. So we have already requested all the state governments, and we are continuously working again. Here I'll take this opportunity to request all of you to look very closely at decriminalization. In our communications, we have been requesting you to complete this exercise by 15th of August as the country enters into 75th year of celebration of independence. we must remove all these minor violations for which a person can be jailed. The way we look at decriminalization, if the violation is not serious enough, it can be left out, please remove it completely. If you think that is not possible, we can convert it to a penalty, a civil penalty. You don't need to clog your courts. Maybe we can make it compoundable. Maybe we can make it departmental penalty kind of a system which Corporate Affairs has done. A fantastic work has been done by the Ministry of Mines and Department of Corporate Affairs. They have decriminalized a lot of issues. So this is the way to go forward. Under labor law, I know that unless everything happens together, we can't push it. All 36 states and UTs have to come on board. But in the meanwhile, what some states have done, they have brought in their state legislation, state amendments, like Gujarat, Rajasthan, Maharashtra. They have brought in state amendments and decriminalized a lot of provisions. The biggest problem was the general clause. General clause said that if there is a violation of any rule, you can be jailed for 1 year. So by putting this amendment, these states, what they have done, they have removed this general clause, and rest of it, of course, will have to follow when the courts actually get implemented. But that has removed a lot of provisions for going to jail. Another important point which came out in Manmi's presentation is single window. Sumita is sitting here, she is driving the project for National Single Window. That is something which can be transformational. I would request all states, to my understanding, 16 states have already come on board. Rest of the states need to come on board. We are trying to create a system. Anybody who has seen the National Single Window would know that there is a provision for know your approvals. So this is something which businesses always used to find it very difficult. What all approvals do we need? It's a fantastic tool. And then those 16 states which are already integrated to this National Single Window, an investor sitting, say, in US or Europe or anywhere, can actually apply and get the land allotted. Of course, nobody will do that without seeing even once. But to my understanding, how a business gets done, a person comes, sees 3, 4, 5 alternative sites, goes back, and till now he had to come back again to actually do the investment and make the actual purchase. But once you have seen everything, you go back and you take a decision, and then sitting online, you purchase your land, you book your land, whatever you want. So that's possible. This seamless integration of the state and the National Single Window is the way to go forward. So I would request all the states present here today to take it up as a top priority agenda, because that will be a really transformational step in ease of doing business. We have to work together if we want to improve the ease of doing business, if we want to bring in investments. There's no other way but to work together. I am sure the kind of work which we have been working together, we will continue to do again in the same fashion. And I thank all the states for being our partners, and let us create a better business environment for the country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As Secretary Sir explained, DPIIT has undertaken a feedback-based exercise wherein feedback was taken from businesses on the quality of implementation of reforms carried out by the states and union territories. The feedback scores have been used to assess the states and union territories in terms of reform implementation. It is my pleasure and privilege to now request the Honorable Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, to kindly release the assessment of states and union territories under the Business Reforms Action Plan 2020 by pressing the remote button. I request other dignitaries on the dais to also kindly join in. It may please be noted that states and union territories are organized in an alphabetical order in each category. States scoring more than 90% are the top achievers. Those scoring between 80 to 90% are the achievers. States scoring between 50 to 80% are the aspirers. States and union territories scoring below 50% are the emerging business ecosystems. It is again highlighted that all the states and union territories are only arranged in an alphabetical order. A big round of applause for all the states and union territories. Heartiest congratulations and best wishes to all the states and union territories for the relentless efforts. It is my honor to now request the Honorable Union Minister for Commerce and Industry, Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution and Textiles, Shri Piyush Goyal ji, to kindly address the August gathering.
Now, yeah. Good morning, everybody. Honorable Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, my colleague, Secretary, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Ms. Anurag Jain, Additional Secretary, Srimati Sumita Daura ji, Joint Secretary, Srimati Manmeet Nanda ji, other colleagues from the ministry. I see a lot of friends from FICCI. Warm welcome to all of you from Federation of Indian Commerce and Industry. All the friends from the media, distinguished guests. Truly delighted to have Honorable Finance Minister amidst us today, fresh from the very successful GST Council meeting over the last 2 days. I think a big round of applause for Honorable FM. Some very important game-changing decisions taken over the last 2 days, both in terms of correcting inversion, in terms of clarifying several issues, in terms of making it easier in the implementation of GST, and of course, making sure that evaders are taken to task. I think holistically a very successful meeting over the last 2 days, which will boost economic growth. We are all in very challenging times, and I think it is most appropriate that we recognize and welcome the efforts to try and bring about a significant change to help economic growth. I think a couple of issues which I must highlight amongst various decisions which directly will impact sectors that DPIIT looks after. One is the decision to allow businesses who are below the GST threshold and are not required to have a GST number also to engage in e-commerce. I think that's a very, very major, big decision which will help the e-commerce ecosystem, but more importantly, help small businesses benefit from the growing e-commerce business in the country. One big advantage of that is also for the handicrafts and handloom sector and the small textile sector. Another big advantage is the small retailers who are very keen to engage with e-commerce. And given the fact that the Government of India is already actively working on the Open Network for Digital Commerce, ONDC network, which will allow different platforms to talk to each other, to engage with each other, and give consumer wider choice in purchasing of goods and services. I think this decision of the GST Council under Honorable Finance Minister will be a game changer for the success of ONDC and to bring the small retailers in the e-commerce ecosystem. Another very important decision is for cut and polished diamonds, which has been very widely accepted, recognized and welcomed by the gem and jewelry business. There was an inversion in rate which has been right-sized by an increase from 0.25% to 1.5%. I think this is a very, very important decision which will again give a big boost to the sector. Both of these decisions are going to increase job opportunities, increase work opportunities, increase entrepreneurial opportunities in a big way. And on behalf of all the stakeholders of these sectors, amongst others, I would like to extend my thanks to the Honorable Finance Minister for these decisions. Well, the Business Reform Action Plan is clearly a baby of the Honorable Finance Minister when she was handling commerce and industry. I remember in 2014, when Honorable Prime Minister gave a thrust to ease of doing business, one of his major areas was that while we are working on the international front in getting recognition for ease of doing business through the World Bank rankings, we must also involve all the stakeholders, which particularly included the states and union territories, in our effort to get them on board so that people really feel the difference, feel the change in their ecosystem in doing business. And obviously, as Anuragji mentioned, that will lead to ease of living. And I think the process started in 2014 is bearing fruit as we go along, rather than ease of doing business being limited to few areas, few cities, few businesses. We are actually seeing that being reflected across the country through the spirit of competitive federalism. Also the spirit of collaboration, where with the central government, states are collaborating to make it easier for their business persons, but also working in a spirit of competition, which is why we rank different states for the work that they've done, for the enablers, for the effort to make it easier to do business, and for the outcomes that we collect as feedback while ranking different states. In some way, this reflects Prime Minister Modi's efforts for Sabka Prayas, get everybody along, take everybody along, and therefore leading to Sabka Vishwas, because that's what the people of India want. They trust today that the government led by Prime Minister Modi will always help ease in living, ease in their day-to-day lives, ease in their business, encourage entrepreneurship, protect small businesses. And I believe the fact that we are today also celebrating 5 years of completion of GST, coinciding with the release of the BRAP 2020 award winners through the assessment of states and union territories, also augurs well, because GST has been one of those game-changing decisions which has helped ease of doing business in India, recognized both in India and worldwide to be one of the most important changes, one of the most transformative decisions ever taken in India's economic history, bringing on one platform all the states, all the union territories, and truly implementing GST, one nation, one tax, in the spirit of ease of doing business is a matter of pride for this government, for Prime Minister Modi, and for all his colleagues. Of course, Mr. Arun Jaitley deserves to be remembered for the wonderful work he did in bringing everybody together and the spirit of consensus which he built up, which was also reflected in the last 2 days in the meetings of the GST Council. Truly a memorable work that Shri Arun Jaitley ji has given to this country and will always remain a legacy that he has left behind for all of us. We have also entered the 70th year of Shri Shyama Prasad Mukherjee's death anniversary. 23rd June, the day we moved into Vanijya Bhavan, the new Commerce and Industry office, was his death anniversary. And he was India's first industry minister, by the way, and laid the foundation or reflected the vision for a modern, for a progressive, forward-looking industrial ecosystem in the country. And I think it's truly a year, all of us in the industry department, remembering the vision that Shri Shyama Prasad Mukherjee ji, the founder of the Bharatiya Jansangh, and in a way, a leader whom all of us in government, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, Nirmala ji, all of us look up to for having truly given the message of unity and integrity of the country. He spoke about one nation, having one constitution, having one prime minister, having one set of laws. I think Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the Home Minister Shri Amit Shah ji, all of them have fulfilled his deep desire, his vision, and something for which he sacrificed his life when we were able to abrogate Article 370 and 35A 3 years ago. In that spirit of one nation, Nirmala ji has been able to successfully navigate GST as one nation, one tax. Today we have one nation, one identity, Aadhaar. We have one nation, one ration card, where you can use your biometric, which is your ration card, anywhere in the country to get rations. We are looking at several initiatives which have transformed India through bringing together all the states, the central government, and the 135 crore Indians on one platform. And I must congratulate all the states for the outstanding work they've done. The method of ranking, the methodology of assessment has evolved over a period of time. And this being the 5th edition of ranking, I think it has evolved significantly from an original assessment of what actions each state have taken to a mix of the actions and the feedback to now a 100% feedback-based assessment system. We have also been able to improvise the feedback systems in consultation with the states, taking their inputs, making it more multilingual, involving their officials in the entire process. And we also believe that the time was now ripe that instead of just a pure number ranking, we should look at encouraging the states through a more collective framework where we are looking at top achievers, super achievers, the regular achievers, and then of course the people who need to really push up their ecosystem going forward. But some of the ideas, the bold reforms different states have taken are very, very encouraging. I mean, Goa, for example, decided to have melas for verification under legal metrology so that the concerns that many times small businesses have of not being given a fair chance to address any problems that may be there in legal metrology are taken into account, and a more transparent and collective mechanism be created for verification, which is more transparent and people cannot misuse it. Similarly, today Assam has 300 plus services on a single window. The DPIIT focuses on 41 services. Assam has taken it to the next level with 300 services. And then of course now the national single window, about which we'll have a session in the second half after the inaugural, where the national single window will be discussed in context of the BRAP, and we'll look at faster integration of all the various single windows into one single window. Similarly, Tripura, I'm talking about the small states to reflect on how much even small states are doing. The bigger states are of course doing wonderful work. States like Uttar Pradesh have done phenomenal work in the last 3 or 4 years. But I think even a state like Tripura has been able to fully institutionalize the central inspection system and has ensured a joint inspection to make sure that inspection is very transparent and very fair. I think the Prime Minister's vision and his commitment towards investments, promoting jobs, job creation, work opportunities, and prosperity for 135 crore Indians, encourages us as we work towards a new India, नई सोच के साथ नए भारत के प्रति जिस तरीके से देश तेज गति से प्रगति कर रहा है, जिस गति से भारत में बदलाव आ रहा है, जिस गति से रिफॉर्म, ट्रांसफॉर्म, परफॉर्म की भावना को लेके भारत में नई चीज़ों को आगे बढ़ावा दिया जा रहा है। मैं समझता हूँ वर्ल्ड बैंक ने अपनी रैंकिंग बंद कर दी हो और उसमें भी बड़ी भारी वृद्धि हुई, 142 से 63, 79 रैंक्स की वृद्धि सिर्फ 5 वर्ष, 4-4.5 वर्षों में भारत ने की। उसके लिए उसमें अधिकांश समय माननीय वित्त मंत्री, वाणिज्य मंत्री भी थी, उद्योग मंत्री भी थी। मैं समझता हूँ वो बड़ा छलांग और आगे सुधरता, पर एक पड़ोसी देश ने कुछ गलत काम करने के कारण वो तो डिसकंटिन्यू हो गया। पर मुझे खुशी है कि भारत के अंदर हमने इस स्पर्धा को चालू रखा है, स्टेट्स की रैंकिंग निरंतर चल रही है और मेरी उम्मीद है कि इसके कारण जो हमारा उद्योग जगत है, जो हमारे उद्यमी हैं, उनको अवश्य बदलाव महसूस हो रहा होगा, उनके व्यापार करने के, उनके उद्योग चलाने में सरलता महसूस करते होंगे और आगे भी चल के ये प्रयास पूरे जोश के साथ चलता रहेगा। आप सब भी हमें फीडबैक देते रहें, मीडिया के भी हमारे बंधु हमें लगातार फीडबैक देते भी रहे हैं, आगे भी देते रहेंगे। इस आशा के साथ आप सब आज आए, उसके लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और हमारे वित्त मंत्री जी ने हम सबको समय दिया और अभी शायद अभी लौटी है इतना पूरा बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बैठकों के बाद, और आप आज हमारे कार्यक्रम में आए, उसके लिए आपका तहे दिल से धन्यवाद, शुक्रिया।
Thank you so much, sir. I'm privileged to now request the Honorable Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs to deliver the special address.
Good morning. Honorable Minister Piyush Goyal ji, Secretary Anurag Jain, Additional Secretary Sumita Davra, Joint Secretary Manmeet Nanda, and all officials of the Department of Industrial Policy and Internal Trade, industry and business leaders, media, and all other invited guests. I'm indeed very happy to be here today for the release of the Business Reforms Action Plan. The initial presentation, of course, showed how what was started off as ease of doing business ranking, India's ranking among the nations around the world, and India, within India, the ranking among states, which started off initially with its own limitations, which was very well explained by the Secretary. India drastically changed the way in which this could be actually calibrated to suit India's own federal system. So it was not just going to be on phone calls made by random people to random industries in just 2 metropolitan towns of Mumbai and Delhi, but it had to be also across the country. A country of India's size couldn't be represented by industries who are just located in Delhi and Mumbai. So it was to be expanded. And also it wasn't just going to be on telephonic interview of taking the feedback from a few business leaders, however right they may be. But it had to be also a two-way process of actually what is being felt by the industry when they really have to work together with the regulators or with the system. So the ease of doing business today having come to become Business Reforms Action Plan has itself seen a lot of right changes and adaptations which were so required for understanding what's happening for business on the ground. So I'm glad to see that year after year, we are bringing in newer ways of making it a lot more real-time and a lot more robust, so that what it indicates really means something. And that is the change which, not just in the name, but also has shown that states believe in healthy competition among themselves, and they're not averse to the system of being rated in some way, not necessarily ranked, but being rated in some way. They're not averse to that. Equally, some best practices followed by some states have now become so beautifully documented, it is easy for policymakers in some of the states to adapt it, saying if they could do so well, and by taking this measure, they've actually made it possible for industry to feel that the governance elements are really coming on board. Many other states have also adopted those methods. Earlier it used to be just look at this one state or that one state. Now it's for each one of them for their specific achievements year after year. So you find that best practices are getting replicated very quickly. You're also finding that there is a healthy way of looking at competition. States are not averse to it. And above all, what it does eventually is that industry feels that things are moving fast in this time period, particularly after the pandemic. Although this started much before the pandemic, during the pandemic, it is that, like the way when we talk about fintech, like the way we talk about payment systems, the digitization program which was taken up in such mission mode actually gave relief during the worst of the pandemics. Similarly, you find that many of the steps which were taken up even before the pandemic stood the test of time during the pandemic. And as a result, you find there is an appetite for wanting to change a lot of things which are so entrenched. And therefore, today the call for reform is not because maybe it will bring some good, but it's because, please, it's necessary, do it. And we are with you in doing it. So that is where I think a government where the Prime Minister himself is ready to listen to the industry. And not just once, periodically on different issues at different times with different sectors, on different issues of consideration, investment consideration, facilitation consideration, credit availability consideration. On every one of these considerations, Prime Minister himself has been accessing, even during the COVID period, online, if not in person, and therefore clearly indicating that this government is willing to listen and take steps in response. So I would think the reforms which are happening in such speed is more responsive reforms rather than reforms because they've been listed once upon a time that this is a hurdle, so it has to be removed. It's more responsive. It is every now and then hearing those who are the stakeholders and responding accordingly. So when the Prime Minister himself does it, naturally the ministers of every department are clued into it. They follow up and make sure that what has been heard by the Prime Minister is acted upon, and acted upon to at least some satisfaction of the industry. Things which are left over are carried forward further. So unlike the days of 91, where reforms were almost given to us, that you will have to do it. Circumstances were such, I'm not faulting anybody, but when reforms were handed over saying you do these for a better economy, now there is no compulsion on anybody. But here is an administration which understands that when reformed, when eased out, systems bear better results and systems hold better for industry, eventually making the life of every Indian citizen better. No compulsion, but a thorough understanding of what will make every one of our lives better, what good governance can help us, not a superimposing government where it should not be, but where it should not also be absent. And as a result, this inclination towards a responsive reform is actually bearing the result. And in a federal structure, that's what is making all states to work together. Piyush referred to my GST Council meeting of last 2 days. It was definitely in such a spirit that all the states worked together. There was a lot of input sharing. And everyone has increasingly come on board to understand that it has to be everybody's effort. Particularly at a time when we're coming out of the pandemic, with all the steps being taken by the union government, so are the state governments doing their bit. So it is going to be a collective effort. And therefore, I think the way in which commerce and industry have worked towards making newer set of reforms also come into the old listed reforms, keep reforms real time, add measures which have never been touched earlier, and make sure that it is going down from the union to the state, to the district, to the block level. So every elected government, even at the panchayat level, is now conscious that they will have to undertake such steps so that everybody's compliance will come down, the nation will be better governed. And that is why when we sit in the GST Council also, the thought is, how do we take these measures to the bottommost layer? And in the finance ministry, the approach, although guided by the principles of devolution given by the Finance Commission, every time where there is a possibility, we link it to reform-based. Whether you're borrowing as a state, you may borrow X amount or a certain more percentage, provided you undertake some tangible reforms. Unless we have this approach of nudge people to do it, it's very difficult to achieve by one diktat, by one order, by one office memorandum. And therefore, this element of nudge is brought into every layer of administration that states today understand the need for reforms. And one last point, which I'd certainly say for government and each of the department, and for the industry separately, is it's fine for the Prime Minister, it's fine for the ministers, it's fine for government to interact with the states, and also between them talk about what reforms actually can give us or deliver for us. But I think there is also a need for capacity to be built. At least I can speak for the Department of Revenue, which, in the name of wanting to bring efficiency in revenue collection, has spent a lot of time with the states to improve and build capacities. And that is why you find when the GST collection is going up, it's going up not just because people are paying more tax, but also loopholes are plugged. And also newer, unrolled, unregistered, unassessed people are coming on board, so that is happening. Now, if that kind of capacity building towards a comprehensive approach has to be made from the states, many of the states would still need that hand-holding. And I would think it should be part of Business Reforms Action Plan to have a layer of capacity building at various different levels of administration, be it the panchayat, be it the states, and of course, still with the state governments. And therefore, I would think it's important for the department, not just the commerce and industry, but all others, because all of us are taking this approach of government as a whole, government as one. And the last point, which I'd like to underline here, is I said, yes, we take up reforms by nudging the state governments, by gently requesting them to understand the importance, by talking to the panchayat level officers. But I found most effective is the way in where the industry is involved. When industry, which is prevalent, and many of them are prevalent in more than one states, approach their respective state governments and speak about and continuously engage with them to say the virtues of taking one step forward, state governments do come around, even if they have a justifiable practical difficulty in undertaking some steps. So I would think the nudging cannot just be the central government, cannot just be some officers. Industry has a very big role to play. You have seen that access to the Prime Minister, you have seen the access to the ministers are actually giving you results. Government is responding to you. Government is taking action. Sometimes incomplete, sometimes not up to your expectation, but little by little we are moving. Although Honorable Prime Minister's repeated advice is no incremental changes, you should look at big reforms. We can't be spending years over, so little changes happening. You will just not be able to deliver that kind of a impact on the society. But even with that said, I would think it's not just the union government alone which can do it. Industry, I would actually request you, I'll appeal to you that you should have that many engagement with each and every state's administration, each and every state's government, to say as to how you would like changes to come about within that state. And collectively, of course, that can be replicated in other states. So I wouldn't want to take much of your time. I'm glad to be here. I was initially associated with the ease of doing business. Today I can see it expanding in its scope, bringing in newer aspects, and also making it lots more relevant for India. I appreciate the effort that the Minister Piyush Goyal ji has put in, and also his entire team, in getting this kind of a robust mechanism, wherein, and I was briefly checking up if I've understood it right, I can't see a difference between small and big states, which is all very well, because efforts made anywhere, small or big, are going to have very big changes in its own territory, but also in the expanded area. So I think matching up a lot of small states' big efforts with the big states' big efforts also has a message. So very well done, Commerce and Industry. And also thank you very much for all your presence here this morning, particularly after a good relief-giving big rain this morning in Delhi. And I hope this exercise will keep us all clued to the fact that India should be constantly on the mode of reforming its own compliance mechanisms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present a vote of thanks on the conclusion of the inaugural session of the release of assessment of states and union territories under the Business Reform Action Plan 2020. On behalf of DPIIT, I would like to convey sincere gratitude to the Honorable Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, for gracing the occasion as a chief guest. As DPIIT is determined to enhance ease of doing business and ease of living with active participation from various ministries, states, and other stakeholders, ma'am, your address has deeply inspired and motivated us. We assure you, ma'am, that DPIIT will spare no effort in spearheading this initiative and achieving the collective objective of making India the most favored investment destination across the globe. We thank you, ma'am, for kindly releasing the assessment of states and union territories under the Business Reforms Action Plan 2020. I extend our sincere gratitude to the Honorable Union Minister for Commerce and Industry, Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, and Textiles, Shri Piyush Goyal ji, for his kind presence, his insightful address, and his continued guidance and support to DPIIT. I would like to extend warm thanks to each of the distinguished participants. Your presence today has a source of great encouragement to us. I would like to also especially thank the representatives from industry associations on directions of Honorable CIM, from CII, FICCI, and PhD Chamber of Commerce. Without your valuable inputs and your participation, our reform journey is incomplete. Last but not the least, I would like to thank each member of the Ease of Doing Business team at DPIIT for successfully putting together this program today. With that, on behalf of DPIIT, I once again thank the Honorable Union Ministers for being here with us today. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I request the media personnel to proceed for high tea arranged on the second floor. I request rest of the participants to kindly remain seated as we will begin with the second session in 15 minutes. Thank you very much. I stand corrected. The high tea